Ladies and gentlemen, we have decided to present a sequence of programs with important professors, lecturers, talking heads, as they say, that would present the global response to the coronavirus crisis. In this edition, that is co-organized by TV1 and the Alternative program with the Sophia Business School, we are presenting or giving the floor to Professor Kim from the Hankook University, a very good friend of mine who 6 years ago presented a very impressive view of how the world is seen from South Korea, how we are seen in Europe, and also what is the future relationship in a world that would be dominated by Asia, Europe, and how we can figure in as Bulgaria in this particular world. So he would give a very interesting presentation on how South Korea society has decided to cope with the greatest challenge of a lifetime. It's a very interesting watch, and I strongly recommend that you don't miss a minute of it. And then at the end, I would ask a few questions. I just want to introduce Professor Kim to the audience. He's an associate professor at the Hankook University. I've known him for quite some time. He came to Sofia 6 years ago. But also, what is very important, he was an advisor to the then Minister for Foreign Affairs and Economy and Trade. So he's an MIT graduate, and an absolute, the presentation he made 6 years ago impressed a lot of people, and I'm happy to see him that he's well and thriving in the midst of a crisis. So, Professor Kim, the floor is yours, as the French would say.
Mr. Vasiliev, thank you very much for inviting me online, and I'm delighted to meet all the audience who are watching this program online as well. And Bulgaria is a very special country for me. Visited several times thanks to Ambassador's kindness, and I'm delighted to talk about what's happening in Korea. And I was asked to give a presentation on how Korea has handled the situation overall. And so I'd like to focus on what happened in terms of the way the whole nation dealt with the situation, one, and then government response, number two, and then business community response, number three. And also, after my presentation, I'll be delighted to take questions from Ambassador regarding the geopolitical implications and so on as well. So here we go. I'd like to share this presentation file with all of you here. And here comes the show here. Okay. I hope you're all watching this slide with no problem. And so this is the title, Korea's Response to COVID-19, Nation, Government, and Business. First part, I'd like to talk about how Korea has fared. A lot of people around the world seem to think that Korea has been doing relatively well in terms of dealing with the coronavirus this time. And what does it mean when we say Korea has done relatively well? That we want to have some idea. This is a Korean text. I'll be delighted to translate later on, but I'll explain to you what this is. This is a number of people who are infected. This blue line is accumulated infection. Now, of course, as of April 4th, this was the latest, April 4th, the number exceeds 10,000. But if you can, as you can see here, curve, it has a fast rise here, and it has been kind of slowing here. And these yellow bars show the daily increase. So you can see clearly here, like at the end of February, we had a big jump. Within a day, we had addition of more than 800 people getting infected. Confirmed infection numbers here daily. And I remember this like late February when I was talking to a friend in Vietnam. She was talking about coming to Korea on an invitation by a Korean corporation. And she asked me whether it will be safe to travel to Korea. At that time, I told her, oh, yeah, Korea is doing fine. We have only about 30 people infected, and it's well controlled, whatever. And as soon as I told her that, within 24-hour period, number just exploded. And I couldn't believe what was happening, the way it was happening at that time. And so we had a fast rise then. But since then, important point is, for the past several weeks, things have been kind of stabilizing. And a lot of people are recovering and so on. So this is the big picture based upon which some of the people have been saying Korea has been doing well. And in terms of the occurrences, one of the key points why Korea's situation has been pretty all right, relatively speaking, is we had a concentrated occurrence here. They had a religious group that had a big, huge, explosive occurrence there. And if you add up where it happened, the city itself, 66%, and the province that city circle around, that's about what? 78% of them all happened here, largely due to that explosion at the religious group. So if you subtract that, other than that, these other areas, overall number, the total as of April 8th was over 10,000. But, if you exclude this area, the other regions have been doing pretty all right. So that's another macro aspect of it. This is the overall death. And here, the accumulated death as of April 18, even though we have had accumulated number of more than 10,000 infections, we had this number of deaths so far, so less than 200. And what that means is this. This is the confirmed death rolling 3-day average. And here, look at these numbers. This is the United States, this is Spain, and then Italy, and then UK. And then Korea's death rate has been remained really, really minuscule. And that tells another very, perhaps, relatively speaking, one of the most important aspects of the way Korea has been handling the situation. We had a huge explosion at the end of February, early March, and we were actually at that time number 2 in the world after China. China had the largest number around like early March, and Korea was number 2. And then later on, by mid-March or later, Spain, Italy all caught up, and the United Kingdom rose up, but latest, of course, United States caught up with us big time. And what's important here is that despite the number of confirmed infections, Korea has managed pretty well in terms of controlling the number of deaths, which, by the way, is the most important one, So this, again, shows us and raises us an important question. Why is it that Korea, by the way, Japan, they didn't really conduct as much of the test, so we don't exactly know what numbers they have had so far, but they have controlled pretty okay too. But why is it that we see this much gap? Even Germany, United Kingdom, they have had considerable number of deaths. This is around 100 area. This is like between several hundreds, several thousands here. So this what tells us, what explains this gap? That's one of the puzzles a lot of people are wrestling with at this point. So to answer that question, as a middle way, we wanted to have some understanding about how Korea has handled the situation overall. This is not a direct explanation, rather it's kind of like a pattern or style of which Korea has been handling the situation here. So let's take a look how it has been kind of different from the way other countries have been handling the situation. Number one, different response style of Korea. Well, usually what happens is when we talk about big occurrences like China, Korea as number 2 after China during the early part of March, what would be the knee-jerk, response? Of course, you will do everything possible to close off the country and segregate people and then have set up closures and barriers and so on. That's what China did, right? China completely sealed off the Wuhan city and the province and so on. The thing is, Korea didn't do that. I showed you earlier picture the area where the religious group had produced the explosion of the cases. Well, that city still has remained open the whole time. I actually, well, I'm still doing fine. I'm very healthy, but I traveled. I took a train through the city twice during this crisis, and nothing happened to me. And there was no control over traffic through the city, going through the city. No one was stopping people from leaving the city, from the region. But what happened was, of course, most of the people just stay within the region, stay calm. So shutdown and closure, well, that didn't exactly happen. Rather, Korea went with balancing strategy. That's interesting characteristics and then pattern that stands out, the way Korea handled the situation. So why did Korea do that? Of course, Korean government and people in the business, and then everyday citizens were aware this trade-off between the two issues, health versus economy, right? So if you're going for maximum health, like my friends, my doctors, Korean doctors, when it happened, my friends, Korean doctors were saying, we have to seal off, we have to completely close the national border, and then we have to restrict the traveling of the people. That's what they were saying because they were health professionals. But me helping international business, advising businesses and so on, that was unthinkable. My spouse is a pharmacist, and she teaches pharmacy in college, and she thought from the beginning it was a grave mistake of the Korean government to completely stop traveling people coming in from China. In normal times, we had a daily basis about 30,000 people coming in from China. These are not necessarily all Chinese, of course. We have Korean business people, Korean people traveling China, coming back, but 30,000 people used to fly in from China. And my spouse believes that we should have completely stopped that early on, but we never did until very recently when all the countries were setting up the barriers. So for me, being on economy side, complete closure was unthinkable. So the country was divided between the two, and somehow Korea managed, the situation without complete, absolute maximum closure and stoppage of transportation and so on. International media talk a lot about success of Singapore and Taiwan. Singapore and Taiwan gained and secured their success through these measures, full border closing, as far as I understand, right? And the restriction of travel and stuff from the very beginning. So in terms of stern measures to advocate the causes of health, securing maximum health for the people, they succeeded. China, after that big blunder and big occurrence, they eventually adopted this full closure, strategy of closing off, sealing off the province, sealing off the city, that kind of stuff. But Korea, somehow, domestic travel remained free the whole time. There's no people running running out of that particular region I talked about at the beginning of this talk. Of course, people are trying to stay away from it, and then people were encouraged from leaving their region if you are already in that region. So we had that kind of discourse and communication, but there was no legal or formal governmental restrictions, and the border control itself, Korea remained, as I said, open until all the countries began closing up. So this is a very unique response from Korean side, and while doing so, we still gained or secured that relative success of the numbers you have seen before this slide. And another characteristic of Korea response was openness and speed. Openness here is not like travel or border openness here, but openness of information. What happened was on the macro side, you saw the numbers early on, the map and the graphs and stuff. All those informations were available real time, all the time, 24 hours. You can go in and look it up, which areas, which cities, and then even within cities, within district basis, you could see the numbers of infections and so on. And that was, in my understanding, that was not what was happening in China. So it's pretty different in a way. And information was offered plentifully and all the time fast and very openly to the people. Another one is speedy testing. For those people who are suspect of having contracted or exposed to the virus, those people who wanted to have themselves tested, they were quickly tested in large numbers. Korea somehow came out with a system that made those kind of tests available to the people who want. And that's kind of like different from Japan. Japan, for a long time, as many of you know, because of Olympic Games, perhaps, and then afterwards, there have been interesting things happening. We heard from Japanese doctors. Japanese doctors said, if you go ahead with Korean-style massive testing of the people, the system may break down. If we face large number of confirmed infections, we don't have enough hospitals and the doctors to deal with the situation. So don't do it. That's what Japanese doctors were saying. And Koreans take that as very, very interesting, unique, and something that you will never see inside Korea. So that's kind of the way we see communitarian thinking. Those people who believe, Japanese doctors who believe the system matters a lot, and perhaps more than individual lives. I wouldn't say that, but you know what I'm saying. The emphasis was on the system itself. So very different reactions from different countries within the same region of the world. Northeast Asia, China, Japan, Korea, we took very interesting steps that are quite different from one another in a way. I don't necessarily argue that Korea did the best. It's just a choice Korea has made. Looking back, very, very honestly, I don't think anyone really had a good idea about doing this right from the beginning with full convictions. And with humility, I like to say, Korea took this choice and took this path, and it just worked out. We were lucky, the way I see it. Not about the superiority or knowing things ahead of time. Just different path Korea took, and it worked better, hindsight, looking back. And I share with you the characteristics of the way Korea handled the situation so far. Then now comes my own thoughts about how these different styles were made possible in Korea. The balancing between the economic concerns on one hand and health concerns on the other. Then strategy of openness and the system that showed speed. How were they all made possible? That would be an important question, I guess, in the minds of many people. And these are my takes. First of all, to answer that question, I want to share with you this graphic. This one shows on the left upper corner, this is a traditional market. What do you see here? People trying to shop here, of course, with protective gear. These people are concerned about the community interest. These small merchants and vendors suffering. So we had a social movement where we try to find ways to continue to shop in these shops and markets to sustain local businesses. This was happening in a local scale everywhere. And the concern for small and medium businesses were very big, society-wide. Government offered a lot of support, but people by themselves, volunteers to help these little people in a way, right? And this is a nurse having these kind of protective parts, gears, and like a bandage on her forearm, head, and then below her eyes. Looks like she's in her late 20s or early 30s, and I have a daughter who's approaching 30s, about her age, I think. When I first saw that picture here, it just, in a way, she's kind of smiling here, but it's kind of like broke my heart, moved me big time, because I have a daughter like her age. And this young lady is fighting the front lines against this virus. That really was a really moving picture. And she's having this because she has to wear the goggle here, and she's trying to protect her young skin here, right? And just she came to me as sort of like an image of my daughter, and this is what Korea has been sharing, Korean people. They're saying, this is the fight. All of us are together in here together, and we are doing this together. This is not someone else's business. We are not running away from it. Constantly, this is actually, I think, this is a commercial or social message campaign from Korea's leading bank. And I think this bank produced this kind of campaign or a commercial message based on perhaps her image or other images. Here, she's not crying. She's actually smiling here if you look at it very closely, but she's, of course, exhausted in her sweat here, coming out from the emergency room with same kind of protective gears here. And here's a poem that praises a national hero. And this advertisement says, there is no other national heroes, but she is the national hero who's fighting against this virus in the front lines at her young age. It just move people and unite people together. And you don't really run to the shelves of the supermarkets and try to grab things, take goods away from other people, because constantly these kind of movements remind Koreans that we are in this fight together. No one is running away from it, and we have to work together, holding hands, as one community and one community of a shared destiny. So these people working hard, and this is one of the drive-through systems that they introduced here. And through this kind of innovations, some people say this idea came from other country, but Korea was the first country that enacted this kind of drive-through inspection systems, and that ended up helping a lot, producing fast, wide spread, wide scope testings and so on. So this shows you how the nation and country was kind of united together. So these are my points. So how was this made possible? I think, first of all, at this point, I emphasized in the previous slide here, community of responsibilities. Everybody had their own responsibilities. It's not like you're running first before other people to grab something. And so community spirit was strong. And then the society, opinion leaders, and the common people continuously reinforced the sense of community that we are together here. And then that kind of sense of community was probably made possible by the actual system of public health that the Korean people, government officials, the health professionals, and then everyday citizens worked hard for decades to build. We have a national health insurance that covers pretty much a very wide area of disease. Of course, people with high income contribute a lot, but it covers everybody. And it's one of the better operated national healthcare systems. And in Korea's case, this COVID-19 coronavirus cases, you can get tested. And if you're found not infected, you pay about $16, right? About 16. I think it is right. 16, something like $16 or so. My number may not be correct, but anyway, you pay some amount of money there. But if you found infected with the virus, you don't pay. You're covered. Then you are treated without much of the cost on your side. So the system was hard to build, but it took several decades for us. Then government officials who built the system are very proud of the system in terms of they have carried out hard work against the global trend where global pharmaceuticals charge high cost, cost on healthcare system and all that kind of stuff. But Korea has managed to fight against those global trends and then have succeeded in keeping the health system cost-effective overall. So that system that Korean people are proud of has earned the trust of the people. So people had the trust of the medical system, therefore they could come together, work as a one. And more fundamentally, as I told you, the information and openness, transparency, that was made possible because we have had democracy, we have to say. I'll talk more about the government later on, but the democracy of check and balance. The government was very nervous about how people were watching it, like how it performed. So they're on their toes, and people are watching the numbers every day, and they were assessing the performance of the government. And government performance being assessed every single day, every hour, made a big difference. And that's a democracy of check and balance. So democracy, community, and system. Those three are the key words, I believe, that made Korea's relative success possible if there was any real success. Did government do anything right? Well, you can say many different things, but I'll just say this thing. Only one page. Election. We have the national election coming up in April 15th. And we will elect new parliament. So the government is very keen on this. The current Korean government, they want their ruling party to win. And with the election coming up, it was a very sensitive time. So everything the government was under very close microscope. Every move was scrutinized. And the government, as I said, was very, very nervous in terms of delivering performance, because they keep the upcoming election in mind. As a result of it, government has been viewed in a very positive light. And so far, and this as of early April, the polls show that people evaluate government in a relatively positive light. That's what polls show, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, moving on to business. Business, as you know, this is an ongoing story. And at the end of the day, who knows what is going to happen? But I can share with you only initial phase of how the world's leading businesses have been handling the situation. This is in a very, very, very dynamic situation at this point, so I can only share with you very big macro pictures only. Manufacturing, of course, is in trouble. Manufacturing here includes IT, automobiles, and all this big manufacturing that Korea is engaged in. As you would probably guess, and you are probably aware, for the past several years, the tension between Washington and Beijing has been forcing Korean business to spread out its bet away, perhaps, from China. So India has become what we call next generation production hub for Korean business. So this is Korean president together with the head of Samsung here with Prime Minister Modi. And, all these three people together, it tells you a lot of stories here. And this happens several times indeed. And so Korea is very serious about finding an alternative to China in terms of having other resources and areas where we can source our parts and so on. The thing is, India has closed down recently. Right? So just so did China. So the action of India has caused a lot of problems. Korean automobiles, IT, and a lot of this manufacturing, the products of which Korea leads in the world market, some of those. And so it's a big question. And then Korea also has other production bases like places in Russia. And Russia has closed down big time as well. For example, let me take an example of Hyundai Motor. Hyundai Motor has a factory in the United States, Russia, Czechoslovakia, China, Turkey, India, Brazil. And all these places are. And then Kia Automobile is a sister company of Hyundai, and they have factory in the United States, Mexico, India, China, and Slovakia. And so these places are all closed down, except China. China is reopening now. So, but worldwide, this very globalized chain of network of production has been affected big time. And I have spoken to some of the key executives of these companies, and they say this is no time to talk about future strategy yet. They're really tied up reading what's happening at this point. And so the strategies and visions and ideas of how to deal with this will be coming up later, perhaps. So in terms of, like medically speaking, we have passed the peak, but business side, I think we're still kind of sitting at the peak of this uncertainty, wave of uncertainties. We will get to know more about what they're going to actually move forward. Service industry faces even greater challenge. This number here shows Korean airlines. We have two major Korean airlines. One is Korean Air, the other one is Asiana Airlines. And, they're used to carry in January, February, March last year, they used to carry 5.5 million people, or over 5 million people every month last year, January, February, and March. Now, what's the number? Well, last January was pretty good, 5.3 million. It dropped in February, 2.7 million. Now it's like less than 1/10. And we know the number is going down. So the airline business, travel business, service business, hotel business, definitely in deep trouble right now. And the retail, this is the lines you see in the Korea's top department store. This is one of the luxurious brand lines, and they are waiting for a distribution of masks here because you have to wear a mask to enter these shops. But anyway, it's used to be very, very crowded in this area, but not as much. This is a big supermarket, retail store, grocery shopping here, and people shop with their masks on. But overall, of course, one could safely say the service industry is hit harder than perhaps manufacturing industry. But we'll have to wait and see in terms of the final verdict as we see forward. This is something interesting. This is a mixed picture, but a little bit on the positive side. IT, of course, the international, global IT manufacturing has faced a lot of problems, but this is non-IT side of, non-manufacturing side of IT here. In terms of services innovation, a little bit of interesting and positive stories. Korea has many of the delivery innovations, that mobile delivery innovations, and that some of the Korean companies have been invested by international global investors for their innovations and so on. What they do is, this is a food delivery here, and they have been booming during the time of this crisis because people don't go out to restaurants and they decide to home. And so the food delivery and online shopping, right, that's delivered to your doorsteps, they are booming. So this is quite interesting. As you have seen, and as we are doing here, the online conference and online business management, doing things together with people at separate different places. Those online business solution business have been doing pretty well. And also entertainment business. Of course, the concert halls and performance halls, exhibitions, they've been hit really, really badly. But the entertainment you can enjoy at home through online, that have been booming big time as well. So this, of course, affects not only Korean entities, but global entities, some of the global names that you know. But at the same time, the Korean business were enjoying pretty much pretty all right, as long as your entertainment business was online. So there is a small positive side within the big Korean economy that has been suffering because of the crisis. And this is a change in Korean business and the Korean economy as a whole. One of the important ones, what we call labor flexibility. Korean society, ever since 1987 democratization, where we came to vote select our president directly, 1987. Since then, the labor movement has become very, very strong. Labor unions has become very powerful and strong. So, powerful labor unions have been opposing the flex hours and this kind of job sharing and different kind of innovations in the labor to bring labor flexibility. But now, thanks to the coronavirus, people working at home, connecting online, working at different hours and so on, now all these innovations are being accepted without the labor union resisting it as much. And on the medical side, telemedicine had been opposed big time in Korea for over a decade because these doctors who own their own clinics have been opposing telemedicine big time, arguing that telemedicine will make this huge, gigantic hospitals sucking up all the businesses that the small clinics all have. So they've been opposing it, but people are making prediction that even telemedicine may become more available here in Korea as a result of the situation where people feel more comfortable getting things done online. So some of these fundamental structural changes are being introduced and sometimes forced upon the people because of the coronavirus situation, but in the eyes of analysts, economists, and the social scientists, there are some of the positive signs here happening right now. And so we are getting ready for the post-corona world now in Korea. And in business, many eyes and many brains and heads are all channeled into the question of what next now, and they're thinking hard. And I'll be glad to share with you further as we go forward in the future. But for now, that's what I have had so far. And I'm getting ready to take a question from Mr. Ambassador about geopolitical implications as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Kim. It's been absolutely informative, and I would, before we jump into the geopolitics, because this is a field we both enjoy spending time on, but I would like to ask you because I'm very impressed by the way the Korean society has managed to balance between the responsibility of doctors and the medical community, that they would insist on a lockdown, on the interests of the business community and the other society, because it's a level of deprivation of rights and freedoms. It seems that in most of the world, the medical community, the professional medical guys, have taken the control over the situation, and that is why they have justified the lockdown. Did you have any sort of a meeting or ways in which you could balance the interests of the business community, the political elite, and the health workers? Was it a sort of did it require the leadership of the politicians? Because obviously it implies these are the guys who have the responsibility, or was it because of a tradition of you to talk to each other and to come to terms?
I think the strategy on the side of the government was kind of, non-response, or kind of caution, I guess, while the interests on the medical community, as you pointed out, on one side, and the business community on the other, were kind of sorting through, working with the public opinion here. And what's unique about Korea is for decades, or over 6-7 decades, this country has become very, very internationally dependent in terms of its business and the survival of the economy. So in the minds of many people, the need to continue on with economic activities is very much strongly ingrained. So when doctors say, to save lives, at that time we didn't know, right, what kind of virus this was and how badly, how critical, how fatal, how strongly it could kill people. So when doctors were saying we got to close off the borders, I think just Korean people, having spent 6-7 decades doing business overseas, international trade and all that kind of stuff, immediately came up with these thoughts. What about those people, healthy people who didn't get infected? We have to go on with our daily living. So within public opinion, there was a check and balance, or kind of people were concerned about physical survival. But at the same time, people were concerned about economic survival at the same time. So the mass, public, together kind of made a collective decision rather than government taking bold steps. Government, as I told you, was not in a position to make bold bets because the election was coming up. So they were very cautious, but they were doing things very, very speedy way once they decided to do so. But they didn't want to tell the people what to do up front. Once certain actions out of necessity has become clear, then they just take the action very quickly, but they didn't set the course. They didn't dare to set the course. But the public as a whole, as I said, because of the economic history, has collectively made a decision, and consensus was just emerging kind of automatically and rather smoothly.
Well, it's amazing because in a pre-election time, usually you have the opposition, so to say, or the people in government fight each other over and try actually to pray a different Bible, so to say, to preach a different Bible. So it's amazing how you are still facing elections. The opposition and the government have to reconcile somehow their instincts, political instincts, because everybody, this is the name of the game, they want to win. And yet they have reconciled. It's amazing because in most other countries, first, they have given up on the democratic process. Elections have been cancelled altogether. Then opposition and government are fighting. And I believe that also the Korean media probably has played a role in keeping this spirit of solidarity, of listening to each other alive.
I think Korean media probably had that role in terms of the continuously generating the sense of solidarity. I think they played a key role. But the thing is, they are important political players as well. So they're keenly watching government to find something to criticize about, and then opposition party was carefully watching the government to criticize about. But what's interesting is, the current government is a progressive government. And it was quite interesting that progressive government actually took a side quietly with the business. When the doctors rose up saying, look, the government should act quickly to close up all the borders. Government was keeping quiet. They were not arguing back, but they were not taking such actions. And they were keeping a little bit quiet and then carefully watching what the opinion was. And then generally, because people were working for Hyundai, Samsung, LG, global businesses, and people, even small, medium businesses were getting supplies and parts from overseas, I think the government decided that closing up the borders is not a politically smart decision. So what's interesting was after government took this action of inaction, and the opposition is conservative. Usually they're the pro-business people, but they rose up and took a side with medical doctors and said, government is slow in taking necessary actions. They're having disregard for the people's lives and so on, but it didn't catch on. They didn't really get the support of the people. So,
super. And also a final thing on, let's go to the geopolitics. I mean, this is a huge area, vast area. We don't have the time for that. But, it's now we are in the third or fourth month of this contagion, so to say. What are the takeaways in a geopolitical sense? For example, you mentioned in your presentation that one of the lessons that probably the world has learned is that China shouldn't be the only manufacturing hub in the world where everybody's dependent on whether China buys something or sells something. So that is one of the takeaways. What else? Actually, the Korean business have moved to diversify away from China into India. So what would you say the takeaways? It's too early, but still some lessons are learned.
As I mentioned, Korea being one of the most exposed to the world market conditions because we are so trade dependent and we live on selling goods overseas. Korean business, policymakers, and people in general are very dismayed looking at the overall progress of the situation going towards more of nationalistic reactions, closing off the borders and, businesses being forced to relocate themselves back home and stuff like that. So for us, it's a real concern at this point. And, when we saw our neighbors like China and Japan quickly closing off their borders before we did, Koreans were very much alarmed. So we are hopeful that after the worst is over, we will slowly reopen, but we just hope that things will reopen quickly. And next time, when another kind of pandemic comes, we know now, at a new realization, along with other people around the world, this is not going to be the last time. We will probably continue to have this kind of challenges from different pandemics. And next time, we will have a better lesson. And the countries working with one another, cooperating with one another, rather than repeating the things that we have done, kind of knee-jerk reaction of nationalistic, closing up the borders and just closing down doorways, gateways, and so on. So that's our hope. And that's because Korea has no other choice than remaining as an internationalist in terms of working together with other countries, because that's the way our economy has been structured.
Thank you very much, Professor Kim. I'm very happy to see you virtually again after 6 years, and I hope that we'll meet again. Thank you very much, and good luck to you, Korea, and I hope that we can smile again and return back to our normal lives very, very soon.
It's been my great honor to be able to speak to the people in Bulgaria and also talk to you as my good friend, Ambassador Vasilev. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, now they would cut it off. Thank you very much, and I hope to keep in line because this is an evolving story. So,
Okay.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Stay in touch. Bye-bye.
Bye. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you have liked the presentation of Professor Kim. For me at least, it has been very informative, and it gives a very important knowledge on how the South Korean society has blended together all the interests of the medical community on one side, the business community on one side, and how the politicians have took part in, have decided to pull all strings together to pull out Korea out of this challenge of our time. I hope that you would enjoy the next editions as well. Stay tuned, and thank you very much.